Supposing Europe, USA will create a new regulatory framework for bitcoins, recognizing them as legal virtual currencies. This regulation will be an ad hoc regulation for bitcoins, or it will be extended to other kinds of digital currency? If so, this will open the field to new digital currencies in the future, maybe with better features.
Okay, yeah, it's a very interesting question. According to my opinion, it will be difficult to foresee in an ad hoc legislation for Bitcoin. Maybe it's more feasible to pass a standard regulation that encompasses all the digital and virtual currencies. In so doing, also when it will be faced a new problem related to the issuance of a new digital currency, it will be only to see if it fits that kind of legal standard, and the broader the better. And in so doing, you will solve ex ante the problem of technological innovation. Of course, it's not possible to foresee all the contingencies, but according to my opinion, if a sort of agreement will be drawn between United States and European Union, it will be done on principle more than rules, and in so doing on general category instead of a specific matter of Bitcoin.
The question is how to tax Bitcoin gains. Treat them as commodities or treat them as currency or debt. So tax included them in the gross income or tax at the end of the tax year.
Yeah, good question. The answer would require a long premises on the different inside each countries of the tax pattern and of the regulation reached now as a state of the art for bitcoins. But according to my opinion, and also looking at, I don't know, for example, at the Australia Regulation 2001 ruling of Germany on the subject matter, and the results reached by the United States tribunals, maybe is to be preferred the solution that draw a parallel between bitcoins and commodity, even if a specific commodity, and the United States solution, which recognized Bitcoin as a subterranean commodity, is that one to be preferred. In so doing, we can see a sort of common core among all the legislation, pairing Bitcoin with commodity and taxing them as a sort of capital gain, so the taxation on commodity more than on the end of the year as currency.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
So, due to the finite number of Bitcoin that can be created, from a legal point of view, can it be considered to be regulated even against speculative behaviors of the market, that is, can be assimilated to a financial instrument or not?
So one of the problems is in the absence of legal regulation that some authorities, some academics, and even some cases have assimilated bitcoins to an investment instrument. So in trying to define it. But the problem is that where we have legal systems that give us a very broad definition of what constitutes an investment contract, it's easier to have it fit in. That's the case of the Australian Corporations Act, in which, for example, an investment contract may also cover alternative currencies or these types of systems of payments. Where we have legislation that has numerous clauses, okay, definitions of what constitutes an investment contract, then either there is legislative reform or it is very difficult. And the problem with an investment contract is what very often is the quest is that some form of authorization of the subject that exercises prudential, preventive control is exercised. You cannot extend this if it doesn't fit into the definition from a legal point of view.
Of course. Thank you. So the second question is, Consider the situation in which Bitcoin is a complementary currency with private autonomy, as you told us during the seminar. Then, should it lead to a change in the e-money regulation in order to implement the competition between digital money?
Well, that's an interesting hypothesis. As we said, at the moment, the Electronic Money Directive excludes bitcoins from its domain. It's very interesting because one of the advantages of bitcoins is that it is a competitive instrument with other digital currencies for payment. But once again, this is a legislative choice, policy. So if you want to regulate Bitcoin, and that is what many are requesting, one of the possibilities could be to consider another form of e-money. At the moment, it is very difficult to comprise it within a definition, given the convertibility issues, etc., the redeemability issues that we find in the existing regulation. So it's something that you would condemn, that if you want to use the legal expression, that could be taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
As we said before, the seminar was very complete because you answered a lot of questions. I wanted to ask you about a particular fact, the Antigo's bankruptcy in 2014. And in this happening, this dramatic happening, were lost more than $700,000 bitcoins, so half $1 billion. In this bankruptcy were convoluted on not only market user but overall non-market user. And I want to ask you, in this case, this crisis cannot be seen as an impulse to the regulator to speed the process of regulation framework. And the second question, after 1 year the Bitcoin mania is not past, so people play with fire and continue to play with fire. It can be seen Bitcoin as the next bubble. This is a technical question, only on your point of view.
Right, so this is exactly the point, because I think we touched upon this point maybe a little bit earlier also. As long as we're talking about private autonomy and transactions between private singulars, then even if it remains unregulated, the issues that are at stake can be solved with the existing instruments. When we have it, like the case of Monnet, for example, with this insolvency procedure, that also involved trans-border insolvency issues. There was also a problem like applying the law of insolvency and so on and so forth. The systemic risks are much wider, okay? And the quest, the impulse, the trigger for regulation that we're talking about was highlighted actually. So a lot of extra studies, reports highlighted the need to enact regulation precisely because there were wider risks, and the risks are not only for users, as they say, but for example, the market integrity, for the non-users market in the market, for the authority, for example, of the surveillance, for the efficiency of the surveillance. So even the regulator runs a risk when these currencies are used. It doesn't seem to have had an immediate effect. So the quest has grown, the market seems to be even more concerned with what is taking place. One of the reactions was that some surveillance and some central banks issued even more warnings saying beware, because it's not like you're using a normal regulated digital money, e-money investment contract. There are a lot of risks tied with this, but it doesn't seem to have led to an immediate outcome from the legislative point of view. We're still in a bubble. The second issue that you raised, well, I think it was said earlier also by one of our colleagues, by Professor Boroni, they say, yes, with an analogy to the peer-to-peer network, the economists, for example, made this analogy with Napster, and they said Napster had this wide circulation, it was based on somehow this idea, and then it exploded. Is Bitcoin going to be the same bubble? Well, this is something that I think more than the idea of it being a bubble, I have the impression that in the moment in which a very firm regulation will be put, if it will be put, then it's not that the Bitcoin is going to implode, but it is probably going to remain somehow a very limited phenomenon that follows the rules, whereas a series of by phenomenons that will continue developing, maybe with slight modifications in order to escape the rules, will continue, for example, on what is referred to as the deep internet, where transactions will keep taking place with alternative means of crypto tokens and so on and so forth. They might not correspond exactly to what the Bitcoin, which is one of different currencies, will exist, but they will somehow be like a mutant phenomenon that will keep changing in order to escape from regulation. So a contrasting set of interests. The interests of the authority in regulating, making sure that systemic risk is limited as much as possible, and interests of the users to remain within this domain of somehow escape from a stringent set of rules. Okay.
Thank you very much for the answer.